So this is the meeting of the Zoning, Planning, and Parks Committee for ANC 1A. I'm Michael Ray. Just have everyone else introduce yourselves quickly. I am the commissioner for the Central Park View area on the other side of Sherman, Georgia, and then Water Street between Newton and Kenyon. And Jason?
Sure. My name is Jason Clark. I'm Commissioner of 1A12. I am the southwest corner of the ANC, 13th and 16th and Girard. I'm sorry, between Girard and Columbia.
Mr. Bass?
Sure. Kent Bass, Commissioner for 1A08, which is the northeast corner of 1A. So essentially bordered by Park Place, Park Road, New Hampshire, and Rock Creek Church.
Commissioner Morales?
I am the commissioner for 1A02, northwest corner of Columbia Heights, with between Spring Place to the north and Newton Street to the south.
And then committee members, Stan Vauger?
Hello, I am Stan Voiger. I'm a resident of the neighborhood on Park Road.
And Mr. Nadir, can you pronounce your last name for me one more time?
Takarli. I'm just a resident on 13th Street and Lamont Street.
Great. All right. Let's go. I'm going to allow Anissa. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, yes, I'm Ancia, not Anissa. That's okay.
Okay, sorry, Ancia.
No, that's fine. I'm a resident on 13th Street as well, and I was here to represent a few of the neighbors to discuss 3554 if that is still on the agenda.
It is, but only in so much as that I wanted to make sure, like I was saying before, that the community is getting connected to the development team. I know a lot of the questions revolved around the construction and the connection between the two buildings, and that's not necessarily something that the BZA would handle, but there's going to be a lot of, those are very particular kind of questions. Did you have other concerns that you wanted to raise to us so that we can try to get them addressed by the next ANC meeting?
I want to make sure that this is the correct forum to do so. So I apologize if I'm not familiar with how things work over here.
Sure.
One of the things that you did mention about the parking spaces, which is actually directly connected to this project as well, because currently 3554 has 3 parking spaces, but in the development plans, he plans to make it 4 parking spaces, which is going to be one other issue that we as immediate neighbors, but also the rest of the alleyway that uses the parking spaces are going to find very, very difficult to navigate. And that's just something I thought of as well, since you were discussing parking spaces.
Yeah, in fact, as I understand it, if I recall the designs that we were shown, they had 2 parking spaces in each of the areas, but it's 2 lots, each one had its own parking space. The new parking rules, as I understand them, which are technically already in or available to the development team because they're under emergency action, that they could actually do 4. And so if I'm understanding what your concern is that 4 would actually be harder on you because of the way it navigates the alley?
Yes. Also, the way our cars are spaced right now, it's impossible to even open the door when 3 parking spaces are back to back. And just to even imagine 4 parking spaces is just going to be like, I don't even know how that's going to work.
Understood.
Yeah.
And so you currently abut the property? You're right next door?
Yes, I'm right next door. So I'm at 3552 and I'm one of the 2 condos that are on 3552. So it's a 2 condo story building.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just here to represent some of the neighbors. Yeah.
Sure. And have you spoken directly to the developer? Are you communicating with them at this point?
Yes. So he was able to communicate with us on Saturday, and my husband and me, we looked at the plans along with some of the other neighbors.
Okay.
So we are in communication, which has been a bigger step in terms of like not having heard from him at all before.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Would you, trying to think of the easiest way to do this, if you could, and you could do it privately if you wish, would you mind putting your email address in the chat to me privately or publicly if you don't care. But I'd like to at least take it so that I can check in later on as we get closer to our next ANC meeting won't be, so we can't really vote on these until April. So,
Okay.
I would want to check in and just make sure that you're getting your questions answered and see where those are.
Yes, of course, I'll do that. So are we not going to be discussing anything else in tonight's
No,
meeting?
that is right now. Like I
Okay.
said, I think it was some very technical questions that the developer is going to have to do one-on-one. But I wanted to make sure that those connections were happening.
Yes.
Did you
yes,
have
thank you so much.
any other concerns?
No, that's it. Thank you. I just
Sure.
want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay.
Not a problem, and I'm sure we'll see you in April.
Yes. Thank
But
you.
we'll talk. Like I said, if you send me that email direct, I'll follow up with you too.
I will. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Just to make sure, because I do see other people, was anyone else here to discuss 3554? If you are, just raise your hand electronically. Otherwise, we will move on. And thank you. I received your email address. Okay. Not seeing any other hands raised, we can move on to 616. And so I'm going to bring up Michael. And yep, I see Andamir. Gentlemen, I'm hoping that one of you should be able to share your screen if you want to walk us through the changes that you've made so far to 616. Okay, I think I brought up the wrong. Mr. Cross is in twice. Michael, are you there? You are. Okay.
I am sorry, I was on two devices.
No problem. No problem. So one of you should be able to share, and then you just want to walk folks through the changes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will share my screen, and I will be presenting the project to you tonight. Okay. Thank you so much for having us, and we greatly appreciate the opportunity. First, I want to confirm that everyone can hear me without any problem.
Yep, you're clear as a bell.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the second opportunity to present to you. As we all know, this project is at 616 Quebec Place Northwest. And basically from last meeting, we received your comments, and we appreciated your comments, and we tried to respond to them as far as we could. Basically, the changes is mostly on the exterior and a bit on the addition. That is the third floor addition, and the materials, and basically the whole design of the transforming into a little bit more traditional design. Basically, again, if we want to look back to existing structure, and I would appreciate if you take if you pay a little bit of attention to the fenestration on the sides. And basically, this was one of the comments from the neighbors, that these fenestrations are basically intruding in their privacy. And our goal into revising this set was basically reducing these fenestration on this side, so we would have less privacy issue with the neighbors. As you can see, we have changed the materials of the addition. We have reduced the addition to the minimum size, and we basically try to incorporate more of the traditional design that we basically, based on our experience on similar project on a couple of blocks away, basically using the material that was initially intended on these typical row houses. And basically on the rear addition, on the rear existing addition, we basically try to reduce a little bit the fenestration on the public alley side and bring back the original intention of the space that has been designed. And basically on the addition, on the third floor addition, we've basically pushed back the addition on top of this portion to actually give a little bit more privacy and more light to the neighbors as well. Basically, we did a thorough shade study on equinoxes and solstices, and basically what we have found is that the addition, the third floor addition, has a minimal impact on the properties, on the neighboring properties. This is the summer solstice, which basically is less problematic. This is fall equinox. As you can see in the evening, the third floor addition would be on the alley. And at the most, basically, this is the maximum impact of the third floor addition shadow. And basically, these are just renderings showing the changes in the design and basically our effort to respond to concerns of the community. And we would be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This, of course, is in Commissioner Bass's district, so I would normally turn to the SMD first.
Yeah, I'd like to reserve my time. I'd like to hear from some of the neighbors first before I start commenting on my specifics.
Sure, sure. Yeah, anyone on the committee?
Any other commissioners and members of this?
Yeah. Anyone on the committee care if we start with the community first, or does anyone have any burning question? Okay, well then I'll at least ask. I see we still have a few attendees. Is there anyone on the call that wants to make a comment or has a question? Just raise your hand. Okay, we're going to start with Lori.
Hi, I just wondered, thank you. I live on Park Place, and you went through the shadow studies pretty quickly, and I wondered if we could just look at those again. When you say minimal impact, could you be really specific just to give me a little time to actually study what that impact is? Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Basically, these studies are done on winter solstice. I mean, on two solstices and the equinox, to show the maximum and minimum impacts of the shadows that is created by the third floor addition. And basically, if I want to go through each one, this is the spring equinox, which is the spring, March 21st. And basically, this you can basically see the impacts. This is the shadow of the third floor addition on 9 a.m. And basically this is 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. And this continues to summer solstice and basically the fall equinox. Yeah, and I think just a second. This is a I have a revised set that shows the existing versus the proposed condition, and you can basically see the impact easier. If you give me a second, I will pull it up.
And I know Commissioner Bass has a copy of this as well, so he can share it with the community if you would like a copy of this set.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send this out following the meeting.
Lori, did you have any other questions while we're bringing that up?
No, it just went by really quickly, and I
Sure.
just wanted to make sure that I understood what I was looking at.
Sure.
Thanks.
And Amir, and I know you're bringing up another piece, but just so that I don't forget to ask it, none of the shadow that you're showing, technically, I mean, if the addition is by right, then the shadows are all within right. I mean, there's nothing additional that at least by your measure, there's nothing additional in the shadows. If my question is making sense.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Amir. I just thought
Sorry.
while you're pulling that up, I think, Mr. Ray, that's a good point. That is essentially a matter of right mass. So the 3-unit conversion is not asking for any additional shadow in this relief. I would point out that there is a small penthouse on this building. It's really just a roof access. That penthouse would not be allowed if it wasn't, is that the right way? It's only allowed as an apartment house. So if we were not to get the relief for the 3rd unit, then the penthouse itself would not be a matter of right mass, if that makes any sense.
Even if it were 2 units?
Yeah, so in the RF1 zone, my understanding is that a penthouse is not allowed for a a row house or a flat, meaning a 1 or 2 unit
No,
building, but they are kind of by exclusion allowed on an apartment house, which would start at 3 units. So I think that piece of the shadow, which is pretty distinct in most of these views, you'll see that one little square where it is visible. That one little square would be possibly the non-matter of right shadow.
okay. I may have more on that in a bit, but we do have other hands up, so I want to get to them. Thank you, Lori. I'm gonna. And John, I'm going to go to John as soon as I hit the right button. John, can you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So Amir, does the shadow study show that the shadows are worse when you bump up than they are if you don't bump up?
Actually, it basically shows that the impact that it has is mostly on the streets. Basically, the shadows, because of the situation of the property, at the addition, our addition would cast the shadow mostly on the street and either the right adjacent property on top of the roof, or on the streets, or on the public alley mostly.
And when you don't add a top story, what happens with the shadows then?
It would be a little bit less shadows on the streets and the public alley.
It would be the same as it is now, in other words?
Not the same. It would be a little bit different.
Yeah, Amir, for some reason your screen's not at least visible to me. I'm seeing Mr. Bass shaking his head. Can you close? I'll share my
Yeah,
screen.
this is. Thank you. I think I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty.
Understood. Is this visible to folks?
Yeah, I can see that.
Thank you.
So let me see. I think this is where it starts. So as Amir was suggesting, he prepared some sheets here that actually show both the existing and the proposed in relationship to each other. To Mr. Ray's point, this does not show the matter of right mass versus the proposed, because the proposed is essentially the matter of right mass. But I think to the previous speakers' question, this does show the difference between existing and proposed, which would be what's there today and the impact of the additional story, be it matter of right or not.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that the shadows are worse under the development than if they keep the property at the height it's at now. My other question is, gentlemen, have you done a mock-up of remodeling the property and keeping it at its current height? And could you show that to the group, what that looks like?
If I understand the question correctly, I think that if you're saying to keep the existing, then it would look like what it looks like today.
No, I'm talking about the existing height. When you renovate it,
yeah,
you have the option to renovate it and keep it at its current height, not bump up another story. What would your renovation look like if you kept it at the current height? And have you done that design?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm stating is the only renovation we're doing, the only addition that we're doing is going up in height. We're not going back or out. We're just going up. So if we don't go up, then the mass will be exactly what it is today.
Well, exactly. And have you done that design?
We have not. No.
Okay.
Could you, sorry, Mr. Hughes, give me 1 second. Could you put it back to the sort of the side view? The direct on side view would be better, maybe.
Sure.
Forget which.
Yeah.
There we go.
maybe-
Yeah. So I mean, basically, I mean, as is being asked, really everything there at that top section with the vertical striping that's the addition. That's what would go away. I mean, effectively, if that wasn't there, that just wouldn't be there.
Right.
Everything else would remain the same.
The house exactly next to mine was completely gutted. The walls were hollowed out and it was completely renovated beautifully. And the developers chose not to bump up an additional floor. And that seemed to work very well for the community. And it worked well for the developer and it worked well for the new owners. I'm wondering if the developers drew up a plan, considered a renovation that did not bump up, like the property immediately to my north. And if that is an option for you all, if you looked at it, why or why not?
I can say that our client did not ask us to consider an option without the bump up, without the third story addition. The third story addition is matter of right as a single family or two family flat. And so what we're seeking relief for here, and what the sort of the leap that the client is making is the ask for the third unit. We have not drawn up a two family flat version of this property either. The property was bought with the intent of seeking 3 units.
And do you know why he bought it with the intent of seeking 3 rather than 2?
Yeah, I guess because the property meets the conditions of a special exception for a 3-unit conversion. There is precedent for 3-unit conversions being approved in this area, and so he bought it based on that understanding.
Would it be less profitable if he did 2 instead of 3?
I would imagine so, but I don't know that.
Might that be the reason he chose 3 instead of 2?
I'm sure it factors into it. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll give up my time because I know that others want to ask questions, but the problem that I have as a neighbor next to this monstrosity is what you're looking at in the screen is exactly what I would look out at the back of my house. And those windows at the top would be towering over my property. And we don't talk about views, we're talking about shadows, but certainly this would substantially change my property, lower my property value, while, as the developer said, it increases his profit, lowers my value. So we'd be sort of, picking winners and losers, in my opinion, if we go against the existing people in the community who are going to sacrifice so that a suburban developer can profit. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I did want to ask, since we were on the subject of well, we're not quite on the subject anymore, but I want to go back to that access piece. I've also seen that done with hatches instead of the little penthouse pop-up. Is something, smaller at the top there a possibility? Would a hatch be more reasonable and less noticeable from a distance?
Yeah, I think we could consider a hatch. Currently, the stairs that lead up there are a spiral staircase. They're very hard to accommodate with a hatch. And the penthouse that's proposed is conforming with the RF1 setback requirements, which effectively are a 1-to-1 setback from all sides, which effectively make it not visible, or it's intended to not be visible from the street, as you see here.
Well, and I would agree, especially if this were sort of an interior property, but it's on the end of the row, so it does make it a little, you know, it's a little different positional.
Sure,
as you're coming up the street.
There's probably an extended sight line up the block that may see it. I think we could work on it.
Okay.
We'd have to work on revising the stairs there. We could work on it.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands from the community. Just checking one more time. Okay, now I'm going to turn my attention back to the commissioners. Before we turn back to Commissioner Bass, did any of the other commissioners have a question? No, any committee members? All right, Commissioner Bass, it's your turn.
Sure. Honestly, I don't know where to begin. I will say everything below the proposed upper level is better for the most part. So I want to acknowledge one thing that's a little bit more successful. I do have significant concerns though when I look at your plan set. You don't see any drawings showing the present conditions. I don't see any clear dimensions for ground to the first floor. I don't like your perspectives. I think they're all predicated on people being 4 foot tall. So when you're looking at that extreme perspective, of course, you don't see the outhouse on top of the building. And you don't, it almost seems like it's intentionally drawn to, I don't think you're intentionally trying to deceive, but it's hiding details. And I don't appreciate that. And I do think that when I look at the property and when I visit the property and when I look at the measurements, I think that your property has misidentified the lowest level as a cellar. I think it actually is a basement, and I think it counts as a floor. So I do not think the upper floor is by right. I don't think it meets the standard. And that's a real problem for me. I think we really need an independent person to certify that what's being proposed is actually truth. And I don't think it is.
Mr. Cross, any thoughts on what do you have as your first floor measurement?
It is like right at 5 feet. We do have a survey of this. We have asked the surveyor to go back out because he did not identify the exact building height measuring point. So he is going back out, or possibly has gone back out. But Mr. Bass is right. It's very close. So we'll make sure that we have the survey to prove that. I hope everyone here understands there's absolutely no intentional misleading in our drawings here. The perspectives were actually put at eye level at my direction because I felt like the aerial views when you're looking down at the property were not realistic themselves, that no one would ever see it that way. So I asked to have all the views put at eye level from the actual streets. So we can provide you the views from any place that you might want, but I can just tell you, I asked from this way, and it was because this is the experience. So not intended to be misleading.
But I also need, I want to throw in, and I need you to speak to this too, that it's my understanding in reading the code and all of that, that if the finished first floor to the grade is 5 feet or greater, then the lowest level is a basement, and a basement counts as a floor, which means you already have a 3-story building in a zone that only allows 3 stories, and therefore the upper story is not by right. And that's why I bring this up, because it's been presented from the beginning that it's by right and that there's no decision here. I think there is a decision here, and I don't think it should be a given. I mean, it's really close, but when I look at the remainder of the building, that honestly, if we're off by a ½ inch, whether it benefits, you know, a basement or a cellar, at the building height measuring point, I think we'd have to weigh in that it's a basement, because that would probably be the only place that it's reached 5 feet from the finished first floor. If you go around the side of the building and out to the edges, it actually increases over 5 feet. So, I mean, like, and you know, your original design set had the grade line floating a couple inches off the ground for the entire side. You know, that's not a mistake. You know, that's the actual condition. And the fact that those dimensions aren't in your plan set, that's really troubling to me. And the fact that, you know, were it not for us really digging into this and listening to the neighbors and trying to find a better solution, you know, that you yourself have said you're trying to get a surveyor out there to get more accuracy on this. And yet, had that not happened, we already would have been at a BZA hearing where that would have been presented as a given and by right, in fact, and we were just supposed to accept that. And that's really troubling to me, that everyone was prepared to go to a BZA hearing when that hasn't even been determined.
Well, you're right. It needs to be more precisely determined. It was something that we only recently noticed, that in our survey done by the same surveyor we usually use, who has changed. This is a new process over the last 6 months or so, where the surveyor himself is being asked to identify the building height measuring point, did not identify it. So we're asking him to do so. We're not seeking relief for the additional height. So you're right. There is a potential that this could be determined to be a basement, therefore not a third story. That is how how that language works. And that would be on us. That would not change the decision here. That would be something that would affect that BZA case and our permit. The permit would not be issued unless it has a compliant third story. So I think there's checks and balances there. You know, I wish that we had the concise stuff, but we do have a survey. The survey does suggest that it's right at 5 feet. So we're trying to get them to go back out and measure it. As for the rest of the property, that's just how this zone measures. It measures it at a singular point, the building height measuring point, center of front facade, and that determines the building height as well as the cellar versus basement in this zone. In some of the other zones, we get to have a perimeter method and other things that determine some of that. But here it's that singular point. So, you know, unfortunately, I think that's just how it is. But you're exactly right. It's close, and we'll make sure that we have an absolute answer by a licensed professional.
Can I? I'll just.
Will they be independent?
Yeah, they're independent. They're a DC surveyor. There's only a dozen licensed DC surveyors in the district. So yeah, we're using one of them.
I will mention that I noticed that the hearing for this has been moved to late May. So actually, we don't have to make any kind of formal decisions tonight or even at the ANC meeting, because we've got some time for that survey to be done and for us to get a clarification on this topic. I'll put that out there too. Sorry, in case you had any other questions, Commissioner Bass.
No, just a clarification, because I think I heard this said, but I want to also be pretty clear on it. With regards to the overall building height, again, I know what everything says, and that's not my issue, even though I don't like the addition. I understand a height is the height. But also in the RF1 zone, it's limited to no more than 3 stories by right. And so again, that's kind of why I'm focused on what the lowest level is, because if it's a basement, then it doesn't matter that you have more height that you could play with. You can't create a story that's not allowed. And so that, that is part of this overall discussion. Again, there are many boxes that need to be checked for compliance. It's just not one or the other. It's several. So.
Well, and as I think, as we talked about before, if they don't end up doing 3 units, then the penthouse becomes a question. So it is, I don't want to uncouple them either, because they have other ramifications.
Well, and to that too, let's presume that it's less than 5 feet, just for the sake of argument. Let's go back to some of the smaller things. I don't like the outhouse on top. I don't know why you need a roof deck. If you need an outdoor space for the upper 2 levels, why don't you just restore the balustrade in the upper porch that goes into it for the outdoor space? Instead, you're not restoring the upper porch, and you're removing the door that would go out to that level and replacing it for a window. Like, to me, that's all unnecessary. With that kind of expense, just restore the porch roof the way the porch roof should have been originally, and you've got your outdoor space. But instead, you literally are putting an outhouse on top of this building. And no, it's not invisible. I mean, you will see this because it's an end row, and you will see this as you're walking up to it, because there's a lot of open space leading up to this street. So don't just be dismissive that it's de minimis. It's not. You will see it. Again, and because there are alleys there, when you're in the alley from a distance, you have the ability, based on where it's located, to get much further from it and see it, even though you're not that far from it, because you're not going up onto someone else's porch. And again, to the perspectives, I think all the perspective drawings almost make that outhouse appear to be invisible, which we know it's not going to be.
Yeah, we'll certainly try to reduce the penthouse as stated before. I think we can work on methods of trying to reduce that. We can also work on providing views from up the street, from across the intersection there, where you might have the maximum visibility of it, to really get an understanding of what it is. Again, it was not the intention to make it misleading. As for the porch roof, I know we've worked together on a couple porches. I was interested to know your position on that door that leads out to the deck or to the porch roof, and whether you felt that it was a historic element that was something that should be retained, or something that should be returned to a window. It sounds like
It was never a window. It's always been a door. From the time the house was built, it's always been a door.
Okay. We can definitely take that into consideration as well.
Great.
And if just go back to Google Maps in 2007, and you'll see the brick columns that were originally there holding up the balustrade. I don't have any illusions that those would be replaced, but a balustrade could be replaced, made out of wood, because that does happen. That was originally outdoor space.
So as you're aware, if we modify that porch, even if it is to restore it as we've gone through before, we'll have to add relief to our application. It sounds like you would be receptive to that additional relief if we were to add it.
I would be receptive to supporting what needed to be done to bring the porch back to a condition closer to its original.
Okay.
Since the commissioner is conceding that we're talking about if the if the basement is a cellar, Again, I'm making that statement up front. I did have a question though on the side, because I know we had another property also in Parkview where it was an end unit and the setbacks needed to be from all the sides. So not only from the front, but from the side. And I'm just curious if you've thought about that with this property, because you seem to have it on top of, on the side view, not you set back from the front, obviously, but I just recall there being this thing on end units.
Yeah, so there's this property is actually even a little bit more atypical than just a normal end unit, because the property line actually runs down the alley there in a tapered way.
Mm-hmm.
So you see here.
Yeah.
Which has that little bay coming out and approaching the side lot line.
Yeah.
It does not touch based on our survey. And so this was something that Mr. Bass brought up in the last meeting that we still don't have an absolute answer on, but we have revised this application to be more conforming with the most conservative estimate, which is that this would be considered a side yard and not some form of court, etc.
I'm sorry. I think I put you in the wrong path. I'm talking specifically about the, I hate to call it a third story addition now, but we're talking about the addition on the top. Right now, I would say it is directly on the wall. It goes straight up from the side of the wall. Yeah. But I know I've seen a case in recent months where the addition on the top needed to set back 3 feet from the sidewall, because those sidewalls are considered, on an end unit, those sidewalls are considered part of the rooftop elements. And I'm just wondering if you've thought about that.
I'm not sure if the sidewalls here are considered part of a rooftop element, because there is no.
Well, there's something up there.
There's a brick course up there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Very possibly so. We have not run into that in this condition. What we were concerned about was a side yard setback. Yeah. Which we have pulled back that addition so that it is conforming kind of in even the most strictest reading of the rule.
Okay.
We also felt like that was helping the privacy concerns for the residents across the alley by pulling those windows back on that third story. We're proposing to add, and restore the little roof above that bay window projection, and not do some sort of balcony or something there, again, with respect to the privacy concerns.
Yeah, I obviously I don't know for certain how the zoning administrator will view that, that coping on the side of the building, and whether or not that needs to be maintained or not. So I'm only pointing it out.
Okay. Well, since you're pointing it out, Michael, my opinion is that coping is not just utilitarian. There is some architectural detail to it, and I think the zoning administrator is going to be cautious with it. So it's similar to the coping on the side of my house and the side of the other houses that were built at the same time. It's not just bent. It's not just a flat piece of tin that's meant to protect the top of the brick wall. There is architectural flourish to it, no matter how minimal some may think it to be. And I just want to go back to something else. I'm not conceding that the lowest level is a cellar. I still think that the top of the porch roof, regardless of what it is, I mean, that's.
I meant it. I only meant it.
I'm not conceding anything on that. I actually think I feel strongly that it's a basement, and then I don't know why we're even really having this conversation over a series of months without something so critical to what can and can't happen to this project having been determined long ago, before a lot of money and time was spent even drawing up these plans that may actually not be able to go forward. I think that's disrespectful of everyone's time to not have such a pivotal piece of information not known.
I apologize. The survey was received on November 26th of last year. So we have had that information and have proceeded with that information that we have, but the measuring point that is listed in the front yard is not center or front facade. So we're having them go out to add that. So again, I think we've worked enough. I would like to think that we've worked together enough that you understand that we're not trying to waste anybody's time, that we greatly respect everybody's time here. And we're working hard to get you to revise the applications per the concerns that have been expressed and get you the information that's been requested of us.
Well, and Mr. Cross, I do understand that you've been hired to do this. Someone else this was their dream, and they hired you to make their dream a reality, even if it's to line their pocket and for them to go on to the next one. I understand you're doing your job. This isn't personal.
Thank you.
And again, I just want to clarify, I'm making my comments about that third story just in case, depending on how this measurement point goes. I wanted to make sure that it's on record that too could be a concern, even if we end up that the third story is that there can be something above the existing roof. So you know that now. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments? I'll look for hands. Otherwise, I think we're done here. I mean, again, and I'm saying we're done here only in that we need to find out the answer to the measurement point. There's really, I think before we can make any kind of vote or movement, we're going to have to get that answer. So we'll be discussing this probably again in the future.
Yeah, we appreciate all your time. We'll work on these items discussed tonight, and we'll stay in communication throughout.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to stop sharing, please. All right.
Sharing is not caring anymore, Michael.
What's that now?
Sharing is not caring anymore.
Yeah. I'm going to just see if I can remove. Okay, they're dropping off on their. Some other people are dropping off on their own. So the final bit of business that I wanted to talk about tonight is this parking change. I'm looking. I don't see that Commissioner Wade joined us, and I think this is one of those kind of issues that she probably would have wanted to weigh in on. And I'm going to share my screen if I can find it. Okay, so as we were kind of talking tonight, the blue section here is what the zoning commission is considering as a change, and the line that would most impact, I think, most of what we see is down here at C. When there are 2 or fewer parking spaces required, they may meet or exceed the compact size dimensions specified in C7-112. And then a compact size, just so that you're aware, a full-size space is a 9-foot width and an 18-foot depth. A compact space is 8-foot width and a 16-foot depth. And this comes into play in the case of the 13th Street one that we saw earlier tonight. That came into play because they are including an IZ unit, so they are able to change the lot width to 16 feet. Obviously, if it's a 16-foot width, then 2 8-foot spaces will fit, but 2 9-foot spaces would not fit. And so that changes how this works. I know this is a very technical thing, and this is where Commissioner Wade usually would be able to talk, is that the 18-foot depth versus the 16-foot depth can sometimes mean that people tend to encroach into the alley. You know, they keep their trash cans in the spaces, or there's a door that swings into the space, and so they kind of push back a little. So if they allow them to build them at the 8-foot width, which is fine, because that's not usually a problem, it's having the shallower depth, I think, could be, you know, something that we could comment on. But I kind of wanted to gauge what other people, you know, have either heard or seen or have had concerns with when it comes to shallower parking spaces. I know it's a real exciting topic, but.
Well, you could put it in the parking lot to talk about it later.
Well, the hearing's in May, so we would, if we wanted to submit comment, we would need to submit what our, you know, if we have any. We may not have a comment. You know, we might be fine with the smaller depth.
No, I agree with what you say on the depth. I don't see why they need to be any shorter in depth, because that does provide an opportunity, especially in Ward 1 with where the trash collection is. And we have a hard enough time with trash cans between collections being brought back onto the property as it is. I don't think we need to provide an excuse. As far as narrow, I'm all for allowing them to be narrower to accommodate compact cars, because frequently that does become an issue, and we have made requests or supported efforts to do that on case-by-case basis. And I think in this case, it makes sense to codify it if that's possible.
Yeah, because I think this is all going to, I think this is going to become the by right standard. I might have misspoken in one of my earlier emails that this was going to be part of the special exception. I think this is going to be the automatic. In fact, I think this is now why we had a case where the gentleman was coming before us for a special exception to get two compact spaces. This was on Girard Street. In fact, it's your SMD, Jason, or Commissioner Clark. I think the reason they withdrew the case is because it's going to become by right.
Oh, this is also one I'm fighting because there's some other issues with it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you've had other problems.
Yeah, their basement cellar conversion.
Yeah. But if if we think that, I mean, I can write something up that we would have to vote on it in order for me to be able to submit it as an ANC comment versus, you know, something that I'm personally doing. So I would say that we'd maybe vote on it here, and then I'll just send it out as a comment that we would submit as the ANC in April.
And sorry I missed everything. I had a little emergency here, but so I guess I think I heard Commissioner Bays talking about the depth. I think the depth has to remain because, as you said, where do the trash cans go? So I do think we need that. I've seen a lot of vehicles in other areas that stick across the sidewalks and things. Granted, this is the alley, but just if they start making compact spaces the norm, we're gonna have a lot of problems with vehicles not fitting in. So I do think the width, I think, can be narrowed is fine, but I think the depth can't be changed.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure. So is that Nadir? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I do agree with the narrower, but I was just thinking, you know, if it's a narrower space for compact cars are also usually shorter than a regular sized car in terms of, you know, if it's a foot narrower and the house is advertised as having compact spaces, you would expect more of like a Toyota Yaris, one of those Prius C's that are just generally shorter as it is. That, you know, that may not make it as big of a problem as jutting out as you would expect with, you know, full size cars.
And I would agree that that's what they're going to say, but
it's just, I'm kind of a car guy, so like I was just thinking about this on a car guy perspective, you know, like I just.
But the additional depth has additional benefits that are not about the car is really the thing. I mean, what we then find is that the trash cans don't have anywhere to go, or there's nowhere to put them. You know, you can't, if the depth were longer, then even that smaller car, you move it up a little further on trash day and you put your trash behind the car, and then vice versa, you switch it around. What will happen in this case is, remember, it's a developer that's going to end up making these, because if you either already have a space back there or you don't. And if a development team comes along and builds new ones, they're going to build them shorter, whereas they could easily add on that 2 extra feet of concrete, or actually it wouldn't be concrete, it would be permeable pavement. And it's no skin off their teeth, but they're going to build to the, they're going to build to the requirement. I know it. And I at least wanted to put it out there that we've thought about this for more than half a second.
Well, and Commissioner Ray, I'd also like to put out there too that, it's not a given that 3 or 4 compact parking spaces are going to have cars either. Like, I think we assume that they'll have cars just for the sake of planning, but they don't have to. And it's possible that someone who has a car that maybe drives it once a week or once every other week also has a bicycle, and they do the majority of their travel in town by bike. And if they're a little bit deeper, you could probably get a bike rack back there too for alternative transportation. So I think there are opportunities that space can go to if it's not needed for a car. But I don't think anyone doing development is going to think about the benefits of that extra space. They're going to think about the costs of providing it. And so therefore they'll build to the lowest common denominator. So, I mean, I'm just trying to think of what other uses that space could be if for some reason the cars are all short and that concern goes away.
You could
But
put
I'm
a
also
patio. Could be a patio,
Pardon?
chairs and bistro table. I mean, I could see
Well-
there being always a possibility. Flower
Yeah,
box.
well, it depends how it's cut off from the rest of the yard or not cut off from the rest of the yard, and if there's a roll up behind it or not. I mean, there's a lot of other variables that may or may not occur. But if there's a roll up door, then we're really not concerned about anything sticking out into the alley because that takes care of it.
Yeah.
But I would also point out that if we think this is going to be a new standard that just gets built to by right, then I think that we want to take the path that has the least potential for negative impact. If there's still going to be some kind of BZA process, then maybe we could be a little bit more aggressive. But I will say I really do like something that would become a new standard where we don't have to weigh in on it. And more importantly, where the BZA doesn't have to rubber stamp it.
Yeah. I mean, a standard, and I'll have to double check myself on this, but I believe for the RF1 zone, the standard width, if you've got a complying lot size, is 18 feet. So that would by its very nature mean that you're going to have two full-size spaces at 9 and 9. It's really only if you have these new lots created at the 16-foot depth where you're definitely going to see the 8 foot, or you might get it where you've got an obstruction of some kind, and they're just trying to work around it. So I don't know how, it's hard to say how much of this we would necessarily see. I know we've seen it come up in a couple of other cases in the past, so it's not like it doesn't happen. It definitely happens, and 13th Street is a clear example. And so with the case I think that we'd had maybe 2 months prior to that, also on 13th Street, who did that too, on that old small 1-story building that no one liked. So I'm happy to write something up that talks to these issues and then bring it to the ANC. I'm not going to ask people to vote, but I'm assuming nobody cares if we do that. Okay. And again, they may, this may be the easiest way for them to write it because they have standards, and it's easy for them to say, okay, well, if you can't fit a full size, but you can fill a compact, then do the compact. It does have the caveat that it could be more than the standard, but I think, as Commissioner Bass was saying, they're going to build to what they have to build to. All right, anything else on the table? Anyone? Any other issues, thoughts, questions? I know there was some talk about housing in general, and I did want to say on that topic of building affordable housing, not only in our neighborhood but in the city in general, the oversight hearing I think it was yesterday, by the Housing Committee that included DCHD. I think I'm saying that right. It's the housing development arm of our city government, the ones who handle the Housing Production Trust Fund, the $100 million or $150 million that we put into building affordable housing was very, I thought was very good. It was very informative. Polly Donaldson is the is the director. It really went well into a lot of the topics of what are the complexities of how we build affordable housing. It is some of the most expensive housing that gets built, not only because it has some upfront costs, but it has long-term maintenance costs that have to be accounted for as well. And so if you are someone that is interested in understanding or talking more about affordable housing, I think watching that or hearing more of what Director Donaldson has it's instructive, because I see a lot of comments online about the city not doing enough, but I think we're doing a lot, one, and I think the people we've got doing it know their business. Director Donaldson has been almost a lifelong developer of not-for-profit housing units, and knows what she's doing. So it was instructive to me anyway. Sorry, that was a lot of soapbox for people. If there's nothing else, I'll let everybody go. It was good to see everyone.
Well, and the next thing on the table is dinner.
Yeah, have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.